I wasn't sure how to tell this story. How much of it is real? How much of it is wild imagination? I have lived in this building 12 years. It was built around 1908, so it's over 100 years old. There's a big mystery at this house. I'm going to take you to the closet. My roommate at the time, when we first moved here, noticed something strange about this closet. What my roommate noticed on that day was that on this wall is written the words that you can barely see, "Help me." You can see the E most prominently right here, and the M, help, is right here, H-E-L-P. You see it? You would think, okay, well, that's no big deal. Maybe someone was playing hide and seek, or someone was drunk and just wrote "help me" on the wall. I've tried to recreate this type of writing, and it's not scratched. It's maybe some kind of old pencil, I'm thinking. So you would think, okay, that's not that big of a deal. But when you add in the next part of the equation, you think, okay, well, maybe there's something to that. Directly below where it says "help" is a hatch. And you can see this hatch was cut pretty haphazardly and then made. And you open it up, and it goes to the basement. When we first opened this hatch, right there where the hole is, was a chair, a tiny green chair. It's pretty close to this. That's what the chair looked like.
Looks like an old school chair.
The actual chair was smaller than that. Only a child could have fit in the chair that was just sitting at the bottom of the hatch. Finding the chair down there with "help me" being written on the wall just brought all sorts of theories. Were people kidnapped and put down there? Were kids kept down there? It's a small chair. It must be little kids that were kidnapped, maybe. Now, one day, Joe, who you all know from the channel, who used to live here, hopped down into the hatch and said, I wonder what's, down there. And he pulled out a mask. Yeah, it's weird. What is that doing buried in the sand? Years passed and no one thought much of it beyond a curiosity. This is the basement. This basement is filled with sand. There is a ton of sand everywhere. With us finding things in the sand, the real question becomes, what else could be down there? In 2019, after living here for almost a decade, it was time to move out of Venice. I moved to Florida and was ready to put Venice behind me. While I was in Florida, I kept having strange dreams about the building in Venice. And it was always one of two things. First, there was a room in the building that was hidden that I had never known before. And I was always finding a new room and saying, oh, I can't believe this room was there. I never knew it. And second, there was a little girl who was in the basement. Oftentimes, we would leave the basement. She'd be very smiley and happy. She would hold my hand. She was just a nice little girl. In Florida, eventually things fell apart for me, and what seemed impossible happened. I moved back to Venice in the same building again. Part of me wondered if me coming back to Venice was some part of a bigger force at play. Yes, I know that sounds weird, but all those dreams, I couldn't help think that. And so I decided to go look for answers. The idea of a little girl trapped in the basement. Was there anything there that could support that theory? There was. I found this homemade toilet. A homemade box toilet. Was this a trainer toilet? Could it perhaps have been a toilet for a girl who was forced to be in the basement? This bucket is in the toilet. Like that. And then inside the toilet was this. An old bottle of wine. So you tell me, what the hell is going on here? I wanted to see if I could paint a clearer picture, so I dug into the sand. And what I found was this. is a bone. It's not a chicken bone, I could say that. If it's a human, it would be like a baby. It's probably more likely that maybe an animal got through one of these vents and got trapped and then died in the corner. That's the most logical, plausible explanation. This would have had to be probably a pretty sizable animal, don't you think? Directly below the hatch, there is sort of a blanket thing. Around the hatch, there's little fragments of a newspaper article. I was able to pull out a bunch of the fragments of this newspaper article, which you could see they're like glued to cardboard. So whoever did that, had it in the hatch, viewed this as some kind of important article. Using some of the words, I was able to look through the archives and find the actual article. This is the page that was posted on cardboard. Gold Rush Town awaits its doom under waters of New Isabella Dam, which didn't really provide anything, except maybe the person had a connection to that town. It's impossible to know why that newspaper article, of all articles, was the one that was put down the hatch. There's no way to know. But finding this inspired me to see what else I could find about this building and the people who lived here. And I found some interesting things. On May 1st, 1951 is the story Prowlers Raid Homes and Cars in Venice area. Listed as suspect is Beatrice Barrett, who lived in this home. This case was not that exciting, a woman stealing clothes and other things, whatever. On May 4th, 1958, we have the story of Milton Bieber, who lived in this house. He was running a cash counterfeit operation and was caught. He was found guilty and put in prison for 5 years. That was also interesting, but it didn't seem that he had any kids. But then I came across this case. April 29th, 1924, there's the story of Walter Hill, who lived in this building. Shoots his wife and self. The article reads, firing a bullet into his wife's stomach, barely missing their 6-year-old child, whom she held in her arms, and then turning the gun on himself and sending 3 bullets through his own stomach. Walter Hill, last night, brought to a tragic close a married life which was said to be fraught with jealousy and perpetual trouble. Police investigation disclosed that the married life of the two people had been marked by endless turmoil and domestic inharmony, brought about principally by the husband's uncontrollable jealousy. About a year ago, Hill was held for a time in Venice jail after he asserted to have beaten his wife. Friends of the two people declared last night that Hill had made his wife's life miserable by constantly watching her every move and accusing her of infidelity. Before he died, Hill left a note that in part read, "Please look after Louise," his 6-year-old daughter. So we have a little girl. We know there was a little girl who lived in this building in a time of great turmoil. To me, there was still the issue of the hidden room. And there was one spot I could think of that could fit the bill. I am going to go in there and see if there's any clues whatsoever.
Are you sure that the old wood can support your weight?
Well, I'm going to spread my weight across, and I will be going on the beams.
Oh, okay, yeah. Don't have a Chevy Chase Christmas Vacation moment.
This is the spot. It's essentially like an attic crawl space kind of thing. There's lots of wires, so I've cut the power so that there's no chance of any live wires electrocuting me. I'm seeing some strange things up here. There's Anne very concerned. You can see this is why I cut the power. And this is what I'm crawling through. We have to be very careful. Okay. What is that box? There's a box over there. Empty. This must have been used by an electrician. And I left the box up here. It's really freaking hot up here. Back in this corner, there's some insulation, and I need to be careful with this because it can be very itchy, so I have to get through there though. I did find something that could be significant. This is interesting. An old ladder. I will excavate it. It was very hot. It was like 200 degrees. I was drenched. I would say the big thing we found is that ladder. This is obviously a homemade ladder. You couldn't put a lot of weight on this.
No.
So this and it's skinny.
And it's short.
This ladder could very well have been for somebody to come up. Look at that. It fits perfectly.
You see there it says St. Moritz.
Oslo.
Oslo Cortina. And you'll see if you combine these two sides, it'll spell Olympics.
Yeah.
So I looked it up. It happened in 1948, I think. And then I thought maybe it's skis. It does look like it's been split though,
Yeah.
because they're supposed to be connected.
Anne points out that this ladder would have had to have been made in 1948 or after. The Louise Hill incident happened in 1924. So this ladder was not for her. Anne had a great point, which was, what if this was meant to get the person into the crawl space?
That'd be pretty insecure though.
This could work though, look at it.
Yeah.
With the ladder proving inconclusive, I'm going to dig in the one spot that would seem most obvious, directly below the hatch. Space to use this shovel. What do I hope to find? I don't know. Anything. I feel compelled to see this mystery through to the end. All it takes is one little thing to shed light on the truth.
What'd you find?
All I'm able to find is this. An old plate. That was rough. Despite being exhausted, I have to go back in. There's got to be something. So I go to the same spot where I found the bone. It's frustrating to dig, knowing there's probably something throughout this basement, but you don't know where, and you can dig and find nothing. But 2 feet over that way, you could probably find something ridiculous. A big challenge is that as you're digging, the sand falls into the hole you're digging. And so sometimes you don't make any progress. I could spend the rest of my life digging through that basement and find absolutely nothing.
Goodness.
Too much. It's too much ground to cover. This seems like an animal bone to me.
Seems like it's a part of the vertebrae.
Buried really deep was this piece of a hammer. So now, after all this, I'm starting to think maybe these are just random objects, random relics from the past that are unconnected, that don't mean anything at all. Maybe the hatch was just made as an easy way for someone to take boxes and put them down there. And a plate happened to fall out and eventually got buried by sand. In many ways, this would seem to be the most logical explanation. But then I remembered. There seems to be sort of crayon marks on the wall. Here, blue, red. I never thought anything of significance about that until I was in the hatch yesterday. I looked up. saw something. I noticed, if you look underneath, there seems to be crayon on the hatch.
Yeah, that definitely looks like crayon. Oh my god. It's green and blue.
They're just circles, though.
Yeah.
Maybe that helped me could have been a brown crayon. There was definitely a kid kept in that hatch. So we have below the hatch a child's chair, and then underneath it, crayon drawn on it. Granted, it's not a lot, but there's crayon circles. You wouldn't put a kid down there to play. There's too many nails sticking down. It's dangerous. The only incident you'd put a kid down there is if you want to shut them up, or if you don't want them to see you beating your wife. To me, this crayon proves that there was a little kid who was put into this hatch. Maybe once only. We don't know. But it happened. Maybe it wasn't Louise Hill. Maybe it happened after 1948. We don't know the exact circumstances. But if I had to bet to wager, while Walter was beating his wife, would put his daughter down there so that she didn't see what was happening or to get her out of the way. And she would quietly sit there, and one time she had a crayon and drew above it. And then wrote the words, "Help me," on the wall. For all my dreams about a secret room, I realized, from the perspective of a little girl who was put into a hatch, what would that be to her? A secret room. What happened to Louise Hill? Louise Hill was married in 1937, which would have made her 19 years old. Her mother was named Anna, and in the papers for the wedding, no mention was made of her father. This had to be her. But when we arrived to see her, we learned it wasn't the right Louise Hill. This one was 9 years older than the one we were looking for. With so many people in the world named Hill, how could we ever hope to track her down? Ultimately, we can't truly know the story of those two words on the wall. I've laid out all the puzzle pieces for you to see. Some connect, and some seem not to. So what do you think? Is this all wild imagination? Or was there really a girl in the hatch?